Podcast world, what's up? I'm Chad. I'm back at you. Another episode of This Life Ain't For Everybody. Today's episode of the podcast is again brought to you by our friends Lynchburg, Tennessee, the one and only, the iconic Jack Daniels. We all know what Jack Daniels has got us through: the big times, the high times, the low times, the breakups, the partying. My guest today actually lives pretty close to Lynchburg, and I'm sure he has seen some big times on Broadway and Midtown and the Gulch, the different areas of Music City, USA, Nashville, 16th and 17th Avenue, Music Row, where it all happens, where it always has happened. Things have changed there a lot since I started going to Nashville. I'm proud to have Mr. Ray Fulcher on the program today. Ray, what's up, my brother?
What's going on, man? You doing all right?
Yeah, man. I'm kind of trying to get used to this. It sounds like some things are starting to open back up with the quarantine and the pandemic, and the weather just changed here. It went from 73 to 95 in 48 hours.
I know it's been wild here too. Like I remember, literally 2 weeks ago here in the middle of May, we had a 2-day span where it was frost on the ground. It was like 32 one morning, 33. And here we are. It was like, 2 days ago it was 92, 93. And that's unbelievable. So
It's, are you from Arkansas originally, or where are you from originally?
I'm from outside of Augusta, Georgia originally.
You're a Georgia man. There's a lot of Georgia boys that are in Nashville that have made it big time. And I know you're right there too, but there's a lot of, my all-time favorite out of the state of Georgia. I don't know. Zach Brown's pretty strong. I love Brent Cobb. I think Brent Cobb's
isn't
he amazing?
He is. Good dude too.
What makes him so good? Let's start off with that real quick, just so we can get it out of the way. Of you know your shit about songwriting. You will get into what you've done with some of the guys that have charted and made big hits out of some of the words that you've put pencil to pen or pencil to paper with. What makes Brent Cobb? Is he unusual? Is he different? Is he just real and raw? What makes him a strong songwriter, singer,
I think
performer?
he's just so. I think the thing about Brent is just so honest about who he is, and he's so good at putting the the way that he grew up, both in just the way it was, but also in the geography and those pictures. He's so good at putting those on paper and illustrating that. And and he's just so honest, and I think real and raw is a good way to put him. He's just kind of, what you see is what you get. And I think he's as good as it gets.
You think he has kind of an uncanny ability of like wordsmithing and putting rhymes together like Prine did, per se, of words that may or should not be together or rhyming together, kind of?
Totally. Yeah. He's got a knack for that stuff for sure.
And do you, when you sit down to write a song, Ray, do you look at it for inspiration from other songwriters, like we mentioned Cobb or John Prine, who's a legend in his own right, and rest in peace, Mr. Prine. But do you look for inspiration in that, or are you kind of just a clean slate? And when you go to a co-writer, you sit down to start getting some ideas for a song. Do you try to paint that picture of where you grew up in Georgia, or where you've been in the woods, or where you've been? Is location something? The personality? Is it the people that you've been around, or where do you find most of your inspiration?
I think for me, when I first started songwriting, I kind of found those guys like, for me, it was Dean Dillon and Eric Church, and, a lot of guys in between, but those were two songwriters that I really were attracted to, like how they, the melodies and the rhymes and the pictures they were creating. And so what I think I found out is like when I first started, songwriting, kind of taking the things that I liked from them, and also, and knowing full well that I could not be either one of them, try to figure out what would make my own, kind of make my own style. So I think over time, I've kind of taken elements of those guys and other ones and just kind of tried to, try to come up with my own style and figure out what I do best. And like, what I really love is, painting those pictures of things that I've been through or things that I've lived, but also those things that it's fun for me putting myself in someone else's shoes and trying to imagine what it looks like around them, what it felt like to go through this thing or whatever. So it's fun for me to put in the stuff that I've lived, but also to try to imagine what it would be like in someone else's shoes. So
give me an idea of the mindset when you're in this circle, and you moved to Nashville, and let's just get it out of the way. I mean, you're buddies with some stars right now. You're buddies with Riley Green, and you're buddies with Luke Combs. And I don't know if there's been a more explosive artist in the last 60 months in Nashville or on the music scene for country music, and doing things like Luke has done, staying real, staying raw, not being a quote unquote poster child of what you're supposed to look like or act like, even though he's a clean cut, he's a gentleman, he's a country boy. He's playing Farm Aid. He's with Willie. He's with Jamie Johnson. He's got #1 hits on the radio. He's selling out big shows and big theaters, and he's even doing some arena dates. He's on tour with some of the people that I know that he looked at as his heroes in high school. He did duos with Ronnie Dunn and Kix Brooks, and then you have Riley Green, who came up. He's a Georgia boy. No, he's not a Georgia boy. Is he a Florida boy?
So he's right in. I think he's from Alabama, but I think he spent a lot of time in Georgia too. So he's got some songs coming.
Alabama, Georgia boy. Yeah. So you see these guys start to break. What does your mindset do? What does your psyche do? Are you a cheerleader to where you root these guys on and you're writing for them and you want to see them continue to break and get big, and at the same time you're kind of blossoming as an artist as well? Or are you 100% satisfied if you stayed behind the scenes? How does that mindset work? Where is the fine line of being a Dean Dillon who gets that mad respect from the industry of all those big hits that he wrote for George and all of the different heroes that he wrote for? Where does that mindset, where does it sit with you, Ray?
That's a great question. I think, for me, when I moved to town, I moved to town with it's funny how things have worked out so far. I moved to town with the dream of being an artist, because that's where I kind of started doing that back home. And and we've, and I've been blessed to have that kind of starting to, like you said, kind of been gaining some momentum, especially starting last year. But on the songwriting side, it happened, even quicker, and big things happen. And I think for me, kind of where my true north always lies is it always lies in the song. So for me, if there's I'm definitely always cheerleading those guys and wanting the best for them. And always when I sit down with them or any other artist, it's always trying to write the best song, for those guys. Because to me, it's if a song deserves the biggest platform that it can have, especially some of the more special ones that we've written. And, if those guys are the ones in this day and time and the end of May in 2020, if those guys are the ones to give it that platform, that's what I want for that song. And so, for me, I look at it as I wear kind of both hats. If I want to be successful as a writer and as an artist, I know personally, at least the challenge that I take on is that if I'm going to do a good job in both of those, well, maybe that may mean a few extra hours. That may mean me doing just as good of a job of putting the same amount of effort that I always have into the songwriting for the other people. But also that may mean a few more extra hours at home, thinking about, talking to my manager, thinking about this thing on the artist side, even if I'm been writing songs all day and stuff. So that's the challenge that I've kind of taken head on and really excited about, to kind of be able to, number one, it's a blessing to be able to wear both hats and be able to go tour and have people cutting my songs. And, and I think the goal for me is, to be able to be, to be in the upper tier, on both sides of it. It's hard for me. It's
hard to talk about, but when you're in high school and you're that stud quarterback in small town USA, and every Friday night when them lights are on, those news reporters are writing about the stud, but you're the receiver on the team and you're catching touchdown passes and you're making the great practice habits happen. You are a leader on this team, but you're not getting the exposure or the highlight. How much does it screw with Ray Fulcher's psyche, his mental stability? Because here's the deal. When you see stardom hit and you see dollar signs hit, which you do make a good living being a songwriter, which we will get into that. But when you see the success and the videos with Brooks and Dunn, or your buddy Luke is out here, does it ever F with you? Does it mess with you, Ray Fulcher, that when you do an interview or you get on a conversation with me of, let's say that we're going to be future buddies. I hope that we become friends, right? We got a lot in common. You love to hunt. I love to hunt. We got a lot of the same people that we run with. Does it ever get tiresome when somebody brings up Luke because they're talking to Ray Fulcher, when Ray Fulcher is a battery? He is a catalyst of this machine. does it ever mess with you that you haven't broke yet? And how much does that sit there and weigh on you? Do you count the hours down in a day, or do you just stay the course, stay in your lane, and take what values your mom and dad and your grandparents taught you of, hey, look, hard work is going to pay off. Just keep doing you. How does it work out? Tell me how ego checks into this game and your mental stability.
Yeah. And I think that's all a personal choice. And for me, I mean, I just decided that, it doesn't bother me, number one, because, or for two reasons. Number one, when they're talking about Luke, they're essentially are talking, not we haven't written all of his songs, but when they're talking about Luke and the songs that we've written, Luke is kind of the face of it, and he's the one out there, singing them to the thousands of people, but he's earned that, and he's paid his dues, and he's there for a reason. And, and I know that, we built it together, and he's a generational, once in a generation type talent, So, I mean, I never get to the comparison game with him or really anybody else. And I mean, and the other thing, of the other side of that is, I know I've just seen it. I've seen it work for myself. What you were just talking about, like if you could just stay the course, and if you do things the right way, and if you go, and if you write the songs, and you write good enough songs, and you continue to work hard, things will usually fall into place. Now, the timing issue of that's the part that's not in my hands, and that's what I have to understand and remember through all this, is that, when my time comes, I just want to be ready for it. And I think there's a good saying out there, something too, that you never know when your opportunity comes, but what a shame it would be for it to come and you not be prepared. So I just always try to stay prepared and try to work hard and try to write the best songs for people like Luke and Riley and whoever else. And also on the other side of my brain go, let's make sure to be writing great songs for yourself, and let's figure out what you want to say as an artist. And I think we've gotten really, really close to that, and we're doing some cool stuff now. And I found a lot of those songs. But for me, I mean, and I think part of it's just my mental health. It's like, I don't ever let my mind kind of go into that mindset, because then you're in choppy waters then, you know what I mean? Because because then you start feeling like, well, why not me? It should be me. And I think the things are the way they are for a reason. And I think that through time and through, through effort and doing things the right way, I think that, that I'm going to get my shot on that side too. So
that's a great way to look at it. And how does the reaction take place when you're in your rig and you're driving or you're hanging and you hear one of those songs come on? Is it a validation to you that, hey man, the hard work is paying off and good for Luke, and getting to see the response of the listener, the concert goer, the partier on Broadway, guys doing covers of your songs? There's people that are taking a Ray Fulcher tune and Luke puts it on the radio, but then you also have other cover bands doing them on Broadway, right? It's crazy to think that, and you're at such a young age, and you're experiencing that already, because he is a generational, once in a generation kind of artist. But you have the ability to sit there and hear this going on, and tell me what it feels like.
That's an interesting perspective too, that kind of have been one of the writers on those songs and go out and be able to kind of see it, the stuff you're talking about happen. I mean, or hear it come on the radio, or be at a bar and it comes on, and it's funny. It's a funny feeling being in that situation, and it's kind of cool, because you think to yourself, like, nobody here has any idea that that one of the writers of the song is here. But it is a super sense of pride, to me, to know that, at the end of the day, it's like I took a chance and moved to Nashville and didn't know a soul, and for me to even be to get to the point I'm at is the odds or the statistics, say a lot of different numbers, but to me, it's a 1 in a million chance to get even as far as I've gotten. And so when those moments happen, I'm very proud. And it makes me kind of sit back and, those moments are those little moments that you always that we always tell ourselves we need to take time to do, but those moments of appreciation and like, man, this, a lot's changed in the last few years, and this is really cool that some songs that are some words that we wrote down on a piece of paper, or, you know, making people sing along, or in some cases, you know, depending on the song, have changed their lives or helped them through a certain part of their life, or the soundtrack to their Friday night. And to be that, you know, for someone, you know, whether you're the singer or the writer of the song, when it gets to that point, it's all kind of the same, because it's still, you know, just as much my song as it is Luke's, as it is, you know, Riley's or whoever else was the other writer on the song. So it's always just a pretty cool sense of pride and a moment to, you know, a window of opportunity to kind of stop and like, man, this is cool, you know?
Yeah, I think I say it all the time to people of how envious I am of songwriters, and that it is so much more difficult than y'all make it out to be. As far as, like, I brought up Brent Cobb, I would say that to him once in a while. I'd be, buddy, anybody can write a song, and they can't. First of all, they can't. They might be able to write words down, but they for sure can't write a song.
Right.
How do you know it's a song? If you go into just take me through it, and let's just keep using Luke as an example, because
Sure.
y'all have, I think you had like 8 cuts on one of his records, right? Like, how does it start off? Do you just say, Luke, I got this idea. This girl broke my heart, and I was going to spike the punch bowl at this party when she wasn't looking. And then all of a sudden y'all just start coming up with stuff?
So the way it works for me is it always starts with an idea, and the idea can come from really anywhere. For me, it's either life experience, or maybe sometimes it's a TV show or something, and I hear a saying or something that somebody said and it sparks an idea. Or sometimes I like to call it, I always have my radar on. So like, even if I'm not writing, I could be down at the beach and writing can be the furthest thing from my mind, but I always have like a song idea radar on, so that if me and you are out and having a beer, and then we're talking and you say something that's like, man, and this thought provoking for me, I might write it in my phone, just like, you know, this was that part of this conversation we had. And then I go back to it and think up an idea. But what I do normally is, when I'm really excited about an idea, I'll say, it really don't, any co-writer would be the same, whether it be Luke or anybody. And, I'll say, hey man, I got this idea, and I think this is how you would get to what we call the hook, like the thing at the end of the chorus that makes it pay off, that thing that if you never get there, you're always left wanting more, in the song. And so when we feel that that's strong enough, and usually it's 2 to 4 lines or something, you'll go, we'll sit down and go, man, we got to get to that. How do we get to that hook? How do we get to the end of that chorus? And then at that point, I like to kind of, at least in my head, or we talk it out. How do we get there? How do we frame, this story? And so that the first line of the song is leading itself all the way to that main idea. And it's almost like no different than a argumentative history paper, in the sense that, every line is kind of building a case towards that big idea, and it's a theme throughout it, and it's also one of those things that, just like any repetition, it helps. Like, 4 years ago, I would come out of a write and I would be just exhausted mentally trying to figure out, was it this or is it that, and second guess them. And now, the process is more streamlined in my head, and so that it's I come out of it right now, and I'm usually not tired at all, because it's become more second nature to kind of go through those processes in my head, and then and for me, it's a lot of instinct too. And that's the thing that always, people are like, well, explain it even better. And I'm like, well, I can try, but at some point it's just, they go, well, how do you know if it's right or not? And I'm like, well, the thing is, it's not always just cut and dry like that. There could be a lot of different rights. There could be a lot of different wrongs, but usually in the right, if it's a great song or a good song, or one that I'm excited about, there will be that moment where you go, whoa, that's the right line, or that's the right hook, and that's the right melody. And somebody will go, well, why? And you're like, I can't tell you. I just know that it is. And
but when you go into a write, Ray, and you're with Luke again, and you have 8 cuts on one album.
Sure.
Okay, you're making a good living off of these number 1 hits.
Right.
But how do you know that the ones that didn't hit number one wouldn't have been number one if they weren't with Luke? How does Luke do you guys go into every write knowing that Luke is going to be the artist for this one, or will Luke look at it and go, that's not me?
So if it's Luke and I writing, normally I go in there with the mindset of whatever we're going to write, let's, we're doing it for him. And so, I kind of got a pretty good idea on like the stuff that he would dig or not dig. So when I go in there, if it's, we kind of search for the idea until it is something that, maybe we don't know obviously we don't know at the beginning of the song whether it's going to be something that he'll want to eventually record or whatever. But what I do try to do is make sure that the idea is at least something that he's excited about, that we're both excited about, that fits, what he wants to do, or is saying something that, that he wants to talk about in a song, or something that he wants to get out, or an idea that, he's excited about that maybe he has, and so, but there could be other great ideas that are not brought up, or even ideas that are brought up, but we don't write because they're not necessarily the best thing, because, a great song idea for one artist may not be right for
so
another
do
artist.
You and Luke ever write for you?
Yes, we have before. Yeah. I'm actually just working on some stuff kind of behind the scenes, and I just recorded a song that we wrote together.
Take me through the Hooters part of it's arguably your biggest hit with him, When It Rains It Pours. It's an everyday listen to a lot of people because of how clever and witty it is. Right. The Hooters part, the picture that you guys paint with this leaving her name on the check, which is every guy's dream, and then picking up on the first ring, which is another every guy's dream. This is obviously because you guys have been to a Hooters and you've dreamed of this and wanted this.
Yeah.
You may have even prompted this in certain occasions. Yeah. But it's so cleverly written about from the time you pull up in the parking lot to the time you leave there. And the whole song is like that. It's just like from the lot, the tickets to the four-wheeler, the fishing trip, all of it is so clever. How does that come together? Is that a quick write? You hear some guys like Billy Joel go, "Oh yeah, I wrote that in 17 minutes and made 40 million off of it." It hit Billboard for 30 weeks or whatever. How do you know? How long does that take? And give me that process of that song.
So for that song, we came in, we wrote it with our other buddy named Jordan Walker. And he was living at a house that he's no longer living at now, but at the time he was living at. So Luke and I went over to his house, and Luke actually had the idea of, When It Rains, It Pours, but in his mind, and I think we actually even started it, and I can't remember if we had any words or anything, but we started trying to write it as a kind of the way that the title sounds, which is sad, like a sad song. But then, I don't remember who said it, but somebody was just like, "Hey, what if we take this title that sounds like it's super sad about a breakup and, almost like she left you and then this other, what if we flip that on its head and make it a breakup song, but it's the best day of this guy's life, the best thing that ever happened to him, and paint the perfect day for this guy." And then all of our eyes lit up and was like, "Whoa, that's crazy to do that. And it probably will never work, but it would be fun to write." So we started that. And then in those choruses and that second verse, kind of once you get to that first chorus, we just we talked about kind of, if it were up to us, if it was our life, what would be the perfect 2 or 3 days if you could just put together all these events that would build up the perfect, couple weeks into a guys like us, and we were like, let's try to paint the perfect picture of what would the perfect 2 weeks in a guy's life be. And so we just started talking about the different things, and we were like, being like when we were a kid, like trying to call into the radio station and winning something. Well, what if you won a dang trip, and then you get down there and all of a sudden you're single and there's all these pretty girls everywhere? Man, how cool would that be? How cool would it be to pull up in Hooters, get the last spot, go in there, and there's this we kind of talked about our, man, remember that time we went to Hooters And so we got to talking about that. And like, we talked about how everybody tries to leave their number for the waitress and nobody ever calls them back. It's like, well, what if this time you don't even have to do that? This waitress comes over, leaves her number, you call her, she picks up, bam, just like, perfect world scenario. And so we just took those things and we just ran with them. And I'll tell you what, we laughed so hard during that write, just putting together those lines. And, and what's funny is we walked out of the room that day, just, not knowing, obviously, we wrote that song in 2015. So not knowing, what in the world it would turn into. We just thought, man, what a fun write. And, and hopefully one day, somebody else sing it. And at that time, Luke didn't have a record deal, and so there was what's really cool about that write is we wrote that without, having any clue about what eventually would happen to it. And to see it not only, get on radio, but be as big of a hit as it was, is just wild to look back on.
In my opinion, I think, and I don't know if Luke would ever hear me say this, and if I ever hung with you and Luke at Duck Camp, I would even say this to him, and hopefully he wouldn't take it the wrong way, but you don't look at Luke Combs, and I know that he probably internally gets tired of hearing, well, he ain't the poster child. He doesn't look like like the Aaron Lewis song when George Jones tells him you're going to need to lose a few lbs and cut your hair and all this shit, right, to stay here in Nashville. Well, when Luke sings a song like you and him wrote, if you wrote it, you got more of that Georgia Aldine, Red Akins, Dallas Davidson, Georgia peach picker look. You got the nice trim beard with the nice shirt and the right amount of starch in it. Luke's up there in some Dickies pants with a red Solo cup with a shirt that hasn't ever been ironed, and he walks around in a baseball hat and just has a voice from heaven, right? I truly feel that Luke Combs' ability to touch the listener gives everybody the hope that this life is okay. This life, that can happen to me. I don't know. I don't know if it's ever going to, but that just gave me that vision of what could be, right? And I think that a lot of it has to do, Ray, that it's not just another pretty guy or another face that's singing the song. Now, I'm not saying that the people that are considered faces don't have mad talent. I'm simply saying that with Luke being the artist, he touches a huge amount of people that gives them hope. And I think that especially in a time like right now, when Luke and Rob and Brent wrote that song that just went to the radio or is going to radio right now, 6 Feet Apart, that song gave people hope, right? I miss my mom. I miss my dad. I miss the crowds, the meet and greets, the shaking hands. It gives hope. When Luke says that shit, it's not that it's sitting there going, oh, this is just another girl dancing on a tailgate. This is a guy that's actually painting this picture that, hey, I called up and I was caller number 9. I was on the hotline, man. They said, hey, you're the winner. You just got 2 tickets and a fishing trip to Panama and all this shit. Like, it's giving people hope. And I think that you guys have dug in your fingernails to this ability to do that to so many normal farm boys and ranch boys and cowboys and hunter boys and fisher boys and all of the girls that run with them. It's given this whole generation of people hope. When Ronnie Dunn would sing a song back with Kicks and they sang about the border town, you had to really understand, like, what are they really trying to say about, okay, there's no chance that you're ever going to go into a lost and found in a border town and find that diamond ring. That son of a bitch has been sold off 8 times already, right? But that's not the same as these lyrics that you guys are writing. It's a different touch point. And I truly feel that is why Luke Combs has exploded. Not to mention he can sing like a son of a gun. Like, the dude is mad. He's got so much sick talent. But I just feel like he touches these, he's like this new generation he might be the new generation Jamie Johnson, to where those words touch you in a way to where you're just like, wow, I've really thought about mowing down every freaking rose that I see in my garden because she planted them, right? Like, it gives people hope. I don't know if that resonates with what you, or if you're picking up what I'm laying down, but does it kind of make sense?
Dude, it makes so much sense. I mean, Luke is so he's so relatable, and I think this last album title is perfect for him, because with him, is what you see is what you get. He is the guy, that is singing those songs, and it's not like he takes the mask off and it's someone else. when he gets done. He's what you see is what you get. And I think that he'll say this, and he said this at concerts. I've heard him say it in interviews, and he truly believes it. He says, if small town guy from North Carolina, who was singing cover songs in a bar and moved up here not knowing what they're doing, if I can go from there to being here, 1 in a billion chance that it was, then you literally can do anything. If I can do this, you can do anything. And I think he truly believes that. And I think that his fans gravitate towards that. And you're right. It's like he's like the people's champ. You know what I mean? He is so relatable. And I think not just relatable to people who love music. He's just, loves country music. He's so relatable to the everyman. And I think, and I try to be the same way, just because that's what we are, and that's what we have been, and that's kind of where we came from, and that's what we want to.
And I don't want to take this time to get to know you, because you're a gifted artist, a very gifted songwriter. But the reason that I bring it up is because your words are what's resonated to these people. Now, sure. Luke is the deliverer of that message. Right. Okay. But it's your words that somebody's going, holy shit, that was me. That was me at spring training 2 years ago, man, where I was in that Hooters, or I was on that concert line.
Right.
You have, when you go see a show live, it's almost like being at a cover band show when you watch Luke Combs, meaning that every single person in that audience, from the rafters to the front row of the floor in the pit, is singing every word like it was Amarillo by Morning, or it was Don't Rock the Jukebox. It is literally like a cover band up there, and you're like, every single one of these people know every one of these words. That shows you right there that what you're doing and what you guys are putting on paper is resonating with this massive audience that's not only getting Songwriters of the Year awards and Newcomer of the Year award and Artist of the Year awards and Video of the Year awards. He's the sellouts. I mean, all of that shit is one part of it. But what you are actually doing to the listener is what counts. Because in today's world, in my opinion, I might say some stuff that might irritate you, or I might say some stuff that you don't agree with, but I think that a lot of Nashville has become very cubicle. I've said it on several conversations that I think that a lot of the authenticity gets taken out of a lot of songs because of the ability to push the music to the mainstream and get it on top 40, and then you lose the artistic value that's there, because I will take an Adam Hood and a Brent Cobb song over 90%, if not 99% of the stuff being played on radio. I will take Paul McDonald or Kyle Daniel, Drake White, Leith Lofton, the guys that aren't getting played on radio. Their artistic value to me is being overshadowed, and hopefully there's a voice out there, and hopefully part of our platform can get that music out there, because it truly, in my opinion, Ray, deserves to be heard by the masses. But with Luke and your words and what you guys are doing, it's not that cubicle country. It's something that's resonating, that it's not another Dancing on the Tailgate song. It's when you envision the songs, whether it's Hurricane, the songs that, if you listen to the albums in their entirety and you take all the ones that have been radio hits off and you just listen to the ones that are on the album, there's so much cleverness in these lyrics that you're just like, man, like Beer Can. Did you write Beer Can?
I did, yeah.
See, like right there, I didn't know that. I didn't know that for sure. But when I hear that song and I'm like, holy shit, they took a beer can, that beer served in a can, and now they're talking about the can being the verb, or whatever part of language that is, or whatever grammar that is. Is that a verb? It's not an adverb, because those end in ly. Help me out here, Ray. You're an artist.
What we always say is, they ask us, like, what do you mean? Like, we go, like a beer can do.
Yeah, can do. So it's like a verb, right? Yeah. It's kind of a verb. Yeah. So when you take that, when I listen to that song, I'm like, damn it, man. That's kind of like the cleverness in the new song that he did about beer. Not the Never Let Me Down, but that's a great, clever song. And then you have the one about, the 1, 2, 3, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 song.
Oh, yeah. That's a great song.
All I know is that the resignation is what I care about. The talent is what I care about. And that's why I wanted to talk with you. And when I had the opportunity to come up, I really wanted to figure out what you're doing, because there is a chance that you might never break. There is a chance that you may never be that guy. God forbid. I hope you are. Hell of an artist. But all that part of the talent that you have in that is so to me, it's like, I don't know if there's a better talent. And I don't mean to put so much drama into the talent or the art of songwriting, but you're telling a story in 3.5 minutes and you're making somebody's day. How important is that? Think about what you're doing and how much responsibility that is. And you can't just go through the motions. And that's what has me so irritated with a lot of the stuff that's out there, which again, people be like, calm down, Chad. Those guys deserve to make a living, and they do. All I'm saying is that if it's country music, let it be country music and let the talent be heard. And I think that that's what you guys have done is you've kept it going to where now there's still hope that, hey, the artistic value's there. These songs are resonated. And I'm telling you, I'm not going to get into any artists, but a lot of songs coming out of Nashville don't resonate. You may or may not believe that or agree with that, but that's my opinion.
Well, I think what helped us, I think, is, and I agree with, a lot of what you're saying as far as, I think that it's such an important thing to be true to yourself, and also, to remember that, that we have songwriters and artists have the ability to affect people's day-to-day life and to, have them relate to something and really dig in and hear and really affect their lives. And I think what helped Luke and I a whole lot is, and we just stumbled upon this, I think we first moved to town, at first, before we had publishing deals or anything, we didn't know anything about how the business worked, about how the quote unquote game was played and what you needed to be writing or what you were supposed to be writing. And so we really didn't know like how to kind of chase what was kind of hot right then or the things you were supposed to be writing. So what we decided to do is we were like, man, you hear this one day and you hear next on the radio the next day, and you don't know what's coming or what's going or what's going to be the next big thing. So instead of worrying about that, man, why don't we just write some songs that at the end of the day, if nothing happened, that we could be proud of and that is true to us and that we could listen to one day and our kids could listen to and be like, man, those are good songs. We're proud of them. And let's just write the best songs that we know how to in the way that we do it and just see what happens. And we didn't understand it at the time or didn't know it at the time, but that doing it that way ended up being the thing that all these thousands of people that come to Luke Combs concerts and people on the radio, that ended up being the thing that they were searching for, and we're not getting for whatever reason. And I think it really helped us that we didn't kind of know what we were quote unquote supposed to be doing. We just wrote from the heart. We wrote from our experiences, and I'm very thankful that we did that. We took a chance without knowing we were taking a chance, so.
Yeah. And I think that it brings me back to like the late 90s when a lot of, the part of the country music history that some people will say or argue that is what really brought country music to the forefront with the Hat Pack and the Garths and the Chestnuts, the Tracy Lawrences, the Diffees, the Trits. When you listen to the songwriting at that time that was being played consistently, any Chestnut song, any Diffie song, you listen to Joe Diffie's greatest hits, you hear a lot of the same. Like when I hear the way you guys write, I think of like an old soul that would have been around in the late 80s all the way through the 90s and the 10-year decade of the 90s of those guys that were blowing up, not just live performances, but they were selling albums, which was a different thing back then than it is today, right? These guys were making a substantial amount of money and revenue based on album sales. Times have changed with streaming and everything, but when I hear the songwriting, I think a lot about the way that those songwriters wrote when those songs were hitting in the late 90s, mid 90s. And so I don't know if a lot of the inspiration has come from that, a lot of the way you guys were brought up in the country. What does it mean to be on a dirt road the real way? What does it mean to write about your future ex-mother-in-law and the fishing trips and the things that really paint these pictures? I think that if you break it down as far as the science of it goes, you guys might have not known, what was hot or what was needed. And you were just writing from the way that you were brought up. Maybe it was your roots. Maybe it was the foundation that was already established in you guys, and you're able to put that on paper, and it resonated with a lot of people. That's not easy to do. I truly don't get touched by a lot of lyrics that like, for sure not every lyric that comes out of Nashville, but it's something that you guys are doing that has this trend going on now that people are looking for the next realistic song to come out of that camp, and they keep coming. They keep coming. And I don't know how you're doing it, and hopefully it never stops. But you gotta go back for a second on the song we were talking about when you're in there and he wrote it back in 2015. How do you know when you get a bunch of creators, a bunch of artists in that room? How do you know when it's done? When is it good enough to where you don't know if it's going to go number one and blow up? At that time, you guys didn't even know that Luke was going to get a record deal and that he would be the one singing on the radio. How does Ray Fulcher know, put a fork in it, it's done, move on to the next one? Or I know you might move on and you're still writing this song over here and this one might not be all the way done, but how do you know when that one's done?
Well, there's usually always something in a song, even when we're quote unquote think we're done. We always take the time to go back and kind of comb through it with a, fine tooth comb. And there will at least be one or two little things, whether it's a phrase, whether it's a word, whether it's a tiny melody that's bugging, me or Luke or whoever I'm writing with. And so at the end of a song, maybe it doesn't even take to get to the end of it. We go back and we attack that part until we can get it to where we can read and sing through every line. And that we don't feel that even a rhyme, even a word, even a phrase is off. And that takes, and that does take some patience and some, really caring about the song to do that. But I think it does, when you have, 150, 300,000 songs, whatever, being wrote every day in Nashville, if you don't take the time to do that, I think that it's doing a disservice to the song, and you're undercutting yourself, because the details matter, and the details matter not just of, will your song stand out among other songs? There's especially for Luke, I mean, golly, there's a certain standard that he set, and we, and you gotta, the songs have to be great. And so until I get to that point where I can read down every word and I can sing down and nothing feels out of place, it just kind of, what I was saying earlier, instinctually just feels right. Until there's nothing bugging me, we're always tweaking and getting it right. And then once it kind of feels right, it kind of locks itself in, and there's not much going back to it after that. But sometimes it takes some tweaking to kind of get to that place, even though sometimes it's time consuming and annoying at times to kind of, because you'll go in your head, you'll go, man, I don't know something, I don't know what's bugging me about this, but something is. And so you have to sit there for 30 minutes and go, oh, that's why, because there's a better word over here that would rhyme and you know what I mean? So it takes some time, and it's just like any other job. Sometimes it's sometimes parts of it are, aggravating to get right, but it's really cool once it is right, because you go, man, I'm glad we spent some time really digging in on that. So
take me, I'm looking at a couple notes that I wanted to make sure I touched on, and I listened to this song. I listened to this song, another song that you wrote that I love that you do, called Jesus in Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Is this a true story? Is this something that if your mama heard you sing it, she'd be like, "Oh, you come on, buddy. I can't believe like she knows it." Are you how good of a, I had a buddy when I was in college that would always say a good storyteller ain't afraid to elaborate. Sometimes even throw some shit in. He might exaggerate a little bit, but he's going to keep that story captivating, right? When you hear a song like Jesus in Jeopardy, like, it touches me because it seems like you were writing from the heart and the soul in that. Is that true? And then when your family hears this, do you ever get called to the carpet of like, well, it didn't happen that way, but you got to say, look, Mom, this is what being a songwriter is. Do you have to explain that to people sometime, or is 100% of your lyrics exactly how you remember them being laid down in your childhood or your adolescence and upbringing?
So I think for me, it's like, as long as you create the character to its honest self, and that whole first verse is me just really creating laying the framework of who my grandfather was, and he was just a witty guy and a funny guy, and like, and and the second, it's just kind of, the song is about kind of who he is, and not every single line in that song is something that he specifically said, but it's like when you hear that song, and my family heard that song, they get done with it and they're like, that describes your granddad to a T. Even though I may have never, he didn't necessarily talk about the Berlin Wall, but he was in World War II. You know what I mean? Stuff like that, where it's like things that if he never said directly, my family can sit here and go, that's something your granddaddy would have said, that kind of thing. So it's, as long as you're getting for me, it's important to be truthful and get the character itself right, and then, and then use my own imagination as far as, those thought provoking and those nostalgic kind of lines that really remind me about him one way or another.
So now when you take that as an artist and the way that your mind works, Ray Fulcher, when you have that song sitting over here and then you have somebody like myself saying, I really like that song. And then you yourself hear Riley do I Wish Grandpa's Never Died. Do you go, gosh, dang it, why didn't I tie this into that theme? Because it's kind of the message of like, you're thinking of your grandpa and the things that you saw him do and the things that he taught you of you becoming a man and the person that you grew up to be. Does that go off in your mind? Like, dang it, I missed that one just by an inch because that one's climbing the charts like it did. And I think it got to 12 or 13 or somewhere, sure. But it's still probably that one that every concert goer wants to hear Riley sing. Does that ever happen to you, or are you 100% set like I nailed it with Jesus in Jeopardy, or does your artistic mind ever go, man, I wish I would have thought of that?
I mean, for me personally, and my grandfather, I think I nailed it with Jesus in Jeopardy, but I do have those situations all the time, and where I'll hear a song and I'll go, man, that was right under my nose the whole time. I didn't even think about that.
That's what I was getting at.
Like, or man, it's always more of a, golly, he got me on that one. I didn't think of that, but hats off to him. That's a great song, and I think, and that's a wonderful song that Riley put out. That's one of my favorites that's come on the radio, in the last, in the last year. And I think it's just two different kind of takes on it. And I think each are done kind of equally well, just in different ways. But yeah, there are those songs all the time where I'll go, man, hats off to them. That's a great idea. How did I not think of that? You know what I mean?
So does it ever go also to the way that you're like, hey, Luke, does any of this remind you of your grandpa? Why aren't you putting Jesus in Jeopardy on an album? Or is that one that you specifically save for you, even though the words in that song resonate with me of what I remember of my grandpas, even though they passed away when I was young? Does that ever come into play to where you're saving that just for that day that you're like, nope, that's a Ray Fulcher hit on my first big cut on the radio or something in those terms?
Yeah, it's for that song especially, and some other ones. It just because I didn't write that one necessarily with Luke, but that was one that at the end of it, I just had that feeling. I was like, I always wanted to write a song about my granddad, and that was the one, and I kind of tried a couple of times and didn't really hit the mark. I didn't feel like, going back to that instinct thing. But then this one was the one where I was like, this is a really cool song. This is the one that feels like is the one I wrote for my granddad, and so I was kind of selfish with that one as far as I wanted to keep that one for me and put it out. And it's funny that Luke always says that's one that we'll mess with each other back and forth. Like I'll hear something he wrote and I'll go, dang, man, I'm jealous of that one, or we'll do back and forth. But that's one he's always been like, man, I've always been jealous of that song.
I didn't know that, Ray. When I said that statement, I figured that would be a conversation between you two behind closed doors, or maybe even ribbing each other when you're out at Losers or something and you're having a beer. I don't even know if Luke can even go into Losers anymore, or hang out or go to the revival or anything. I don't know how that works with, and I know that it's not happening right now, so it's not even worth talking to. But I just figured that conversation took place in one way or the other, because that song, another one of your song that really resonates with me. If I was an artist and I had a voice and I didn't have to just sing in the shower when nobody was home, I would when I hear "Take Me Back Roads," I think of a couple things, and I'll shut up and let you talk. When Brantley and Colt did "Chilling on a Dirt Road," and then Aldine made it a monster success. That was one of those songs to where I could picture myself, because I like to live life with passion. I don't want to go through the motions. And I think that was the point that I was trying to get across to you, Ray Fulcher, 20 minutes ago when I was on my rant about Nashville and lyrics and stuff, is that I want a song that grabs me by my guts and like literally won't let go of me, to where when I hear "Take Me Back" and then you put the word roads in there, I'm just like, wait a minute, that's my life. Because my whole life is memories of location, personality. That farmer that gave me permission to hunt his corn for those Canada geese, and I knocked on his door and he said, you can't hunt unless you come in and have a cup of coffee. Well, then when I'm on that road and I'm looking at, if you go back and look at any of the branding that we ever did when we started Banded or the Foul Life or any of our brands, you'll hear me talk about, Ray, about like looking in that rear view and seeing that dust of my truck, and then looking out my right window and seeing that sunset with mallards pitching into this hole. Now, that might not resonate with somebody that's not a duck hunter or a mallard guy like me, but it resonates with me when I hear the road, the dirt in my rear view. There's country songs in everything that we kind of branded our brands on, right? A lot of influence from music goes into what we've done with our brands. But when I hear a song like that, I'm like, to me, that's a hit. To me, that needs to be heard, because that's going to be one of those songs that those guys in the crowd, those girls in the crowd are going to look at Ray Fulcher up there. And I'm sure it's already, I have not seen you live, which I do want to when this pandemic's gone. I'm sure that that's one that you look down and make eye contact with a lot of passionate people that are living through those words. Is that making sense?
Absolutely. And it's funny you pointed out those two, because those two really are two of my favorite songs. And yeah, that's one that I've gotten a lot of messages about, and people just talking about it, because I love reminiscent type songs. And I think I really, really want to paint that picture of like kind of what you were just saying, like, you can't cross, the guy in the song, he can't cross those railroad tracks without thinking about that one specific, kiss with that girl. And he can't go around this one curve and this one road without thinking about his buddy who's no longer here, and stuff. And it's like, every time that happens, it's almost like you get to go back and relive some of those memories with those people. And I think that happens to me all the time. And so, I wanted to have a song that really kind of touched on that. That was one of my, that's one that too, I've always toyed with the idea of kind of re-releasing, once, we get the record deal and everything kind of off the ground, because I feel like it deserves that, a bigger audience. And I was able to give it back in 2016 when I put that out,
Yeah, that's one of those songs where, man, I could just see it to where, and I want to go into this a little bit, into the Nashville Music City lifestyle, and if it ever took over, or if it ever got you, or if you ever fell into its clutches, right? Like, do you loan for those nights when you're not on the road, but you're just in Nashville? And you're living that honky tonk dream that Alan Jackson wrote about, of chasing that neon rainbow. Do you want to be in Losers? Do you want to be in Whiskey Band? Do you want to be somewhere and have somebody say, I like to bring my buddy Ray up and I want him to sing a few for y'all? Do you like to get back to your roots of when you first moved to town? And I want to transition that, Ray Fulcher, into, did you get on the sauce a little bit? Did you get into the late nights and the non-sleeping? Did you fall into the party crowd like David Lee Murphy wrote about and sang about? Like, how true was that song about the party crowd? Like, when I go to Nashville, and obviously I live in the West United States, but I get to visit Nashville 4 or 5 times a year. And it's almost like you strategize, man. You work out hard for 3 weeks, you diet, you're fasting, and you're watching your carb intake, and you're like not drinking or not, because you know what's getting ready to happen. It's almost like that Vegas mentality. So right. Do you long for those nights still? Do you still get off on going out in Nashville and seeing those places that you used to play in and that you still might sometimes? Did it ever get a hold of you?
Man, I do love going there from time to time, and I really do. This ain't me just say it. The reason is because when I go to those places, and luckily I've been blessed to where I'm writing every day, and I'm so busy on the weekends. Normally, we're not in a pandemic that I don't get to go a whole lot, but I do love going. And the reason is it reminds me of that first year that I was in town and how and how special of a city Nashville is, and just all the talent around, and like there's just so much inspiration walking around. There's so much inspiration in the walls of those places, and it just gives you, you know, that feeling. What helped give me the dream was going to Nashville the first couple of times before I moved here, and being in those places and feeling the energy and feeling the inspiration. And so going back to those places really helps kind of remind me like why I moved in the first place. And it's awesome to be at. Now, the first year, if anybody says they didn't get caught up in it a little bit, it's probably lying, because it'll grab you real fast. And I've never been a huge partier, but I would say probably the most partying I've ever done is the first year in Nashville, because it's like the way it gets you is that there's so many writers' rounds and different things going on that there's something you can be doing every night of the week, and it can masquerade itself as being, business. And in your mind, it probably is. But what happens is, you're 4 or 5 drinks in, and here it is 2 a.m, and it's time to get an Uber home or whatever, because, and if you're not out doing that, you're asking yourself at home, man,
What's it called? What's it called? FOMO? Is that what they call it?
You're missing. Like, what am I missing? Am I missing an opportunity? Who could I talk to tonight? Also,
but let me ask you this though, real quick, before you go on. Doors can't open when you're laying on your couch. Now, when you're writing, I understand that that's got potential to turn into a cut for you or one of the artists you write with. But when you're not at the Blue Bar, if you're not in all of these places that have so much inspiration and influence on what you're doing with your life, aren't you missing out? If shouldn't you be at what's going on every night of the week? And then even, which is probably the coolest thing about Nashville, is Sunday Fun Day, which is you're like, finally I get a day off. Nope, not in Nashville. Sunday Fun Day doesn't. The Sunday Fun Day is like the best, right? So
7 days a week.
Aren't you missing out if you're not out there?
Yeah, I think so. And I really do think that when you're new to town, as far as an artist or writer or whatever, if you're not doing that, you are missing out, because there's, the relationships that I've made that have lasted, throughout my time in Nashville. So many of those were started at, Whiskey Jam or at Tin Roof Revival or one of those places, because that's where you meet people when you move to town. That's where you go up to them and ask them, hey, I'm new to town, but you want to try to write sometime? And then half of them are, a quarter of them are, just straight up no's. A quarter of them are, yeah, man, we'll talk about it sometime. And then you don't never talk to them about it. And then half the time they go like, yeah, man, take out your phone. Let's get a date. And so if you didn't do that when you first moved to town, you weren't getting songwrites, like writing appointments. And so, it just so happened to be at a place where you could also get a whiskey and, a Jack and Diet pretty quick too. But yeah, I totally agree with you. If you're not doing that, especially your first couple of years in town, you 100% are missing out, because that's really, that's what makes Nashville so unique and special. That really is where the business is going down. And that really is where you set the foundation of the people you're going to be writing with and working with for the next, 5 to 30 years, depending on what happens. So
right now, off the cuff, no thinking about it, give me one of your top memories right now since you've moved to town. Was it meeting a celebrity? Was it getting up on stage with one of your heroes? Give me something that went down that still sits in the front of your frontal lobe of your brain as one of those top-notch nights in Nashville.
Kind of just, you mean like a night out kind of thing?
Well, just, like I've been there to where you're sitting in a bar and all of a sudden you're like, is that what that is Kid Rock? We're in Tootsie's. That is Bobby Ritchie up there. Like that kind of shit. Like that doesn't happen where I live. You don't just go down here to the corner pub down here where I live and all of a sudden freaking Travis Tritt's up there playing a Waylon song, right? I've seen this kind of shit happen in Nashville on the constant. So like what stands out in your head?
I remember the first time one of the first weeks I was in Nashville, we went to Losers, and I'm fresh off I'm fresh off the bus kind of thing. And so wide eyed and stuff. And I remember, we were in Losers, and a guy named Earl Bud Lee was in there, and I didn't know he was, just a guy sitting over there. And, somebody tapped me and was like, "Hey, you know who that is?" And I was like, "No, who's that?" I'm like, "Earl Bud Lee." And I'm like, "Well, who's that?" And he goes, well, he wrote Friends in Low Places, Garth Brooks. And immediately I was like, wait a second. That guy right there wrote Friends in Low Places. And he was like, yeah, man, go talk to him about it. And so I was like, okay. And so I went over there and sat down, and we just had a conversation for, 20 or 30 minutes about songwriting and about that song and stuff. And I just remember being like, oh my Lord. Like, in my mind, I'm like, oh man, I've made it. Like I've met the guy who wrote, Friends in Low Places. And so, and I just remember coming away from that being like, man, what just a wild place to where those people are just everywhere. And, and he was thankfully willing to talk to me and hang out with me. And, but again, things that will never happen if you don't go out.
And not to mention that it is probably in the top 5, probably top 3, 100%, and maybe the biggest country song in the history of country music that broke it wide open back in, that came out in 89 or 90 on the No Fences album. And when Garth did that, he had the Garth Brooks album out, and this was a couple years before Rodeo came out. But when he did that album, No Fences, and put that song on there, and you heard it, and then several years later, he adds the third verse live, which rocks stadiums to this day after his 20-year layoff. Like, I don't know if there's a bigger influential song, and that dude's just chilling there, and you're talking with him, and he's probably worth God knows how much money off of what Garth made him off of that song, right? But it doesn't matter in Nashville. It's like you see that shit constantly, and you can't lay your head down. And over in Brentwood at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night and be like, yeah, I'm just going to fall asleep. No, you're not. Your head's going to play tricks on you. And at 10:30, you're going to be putting your jeans on, and you're going to be in an Uber at 11 going down to see what the heck's going on. That town just gets you, man.
It does. Yeah. Cause I mean, you can't, if it's like, if your dream is to write and play country songs and you're here in town to do it, and you're, like I said, the first couple of years, and you're at home, you cannot help but think to yourself, like, there ain't been a worse FOMO in the world other than a new songwriter in Nashville, Tennessee on really any night if you're not out, because like you said, your head will play tricks, and you will get dressed if you're not, and you'll go down there because in your mind you're like,
hey dude, I've done it so many times, Ray Fulcher, and I'm not even a songwriter. I'm not I don't even have aspirations of making it. That town just does it to you.
It does. Totally.
Can it go the other way though? Meaning, Ray, and you witnessing this with one of your good friends, Luke is a dear friend of yours, that he is becoming a superstar. He's becoming a country music superstar. Does that mess with him in the way to where, does he wish it was more low key still? Does he wish that it wasn't so busy? Does he wish all of the demands weren't there all the time? I'm sure the endorsement deals, the interviews, the traveling, the radio, the Bobby Bones show, whatever it is. Does he wish, because obviously when you get there, you can't bitch because beggars can't be choosers. This is what y'all have wanted. Does it play on your mental? Do you see it messing with his psyche at all to where he wishes it was still that slowdown and that it didn't blow up as much as it did, or at least not as fast as it did?
Well, I think he's very thankful that it has. And I think that it is, just like will be on anybody, I think it is parts of that are tough where, there's, let's be honest, there's some places and, a lot of this country would be hard for him to just be out alone and for it to be low key at all without people recognizing him and come up and stuff. But also he accepts that and understands that in order to get this, you got to take that too. You got to take the good with the bad. And so I've never really heard him, kind of be like, God, man, I wish, like, if I knew then what I knew now, I would never, he understands and accepts the challenge of the things, the sacrifice you have to make that comes with it. But yeah, I mean, are there times where he probably, misses that part of it, just like any probably star does. Yeah, I think so.
Dude, he's on a Toby Keith. You just sparked something in me when you said, I wish I did know now what I did. You know, when you said that line right there, he's on a Toby Keith path, meaning that he's getting success at a young age with not just songwriting, but with publishing and performing, and with merchandise sales and endorsement deals and you name it, he's getting it. And he's on that road of like what Toby did, you know, and Toby obviously obtained unbelievable financial stardom through Big Machine and all of his history there with Bruschetta and stuff. But with what Luke's doing, it's kind of on that same path as a guy that when Toby was coming up with the mullet and everybody, and he was singing, I Should Have Been a Cowboy, people were looking at him like, it's relatable, man. I did watch those movies. I do hear My Alarm Clock. Everything that Toby's saying, it was kind of in your face and take it or leave it kind of attitude. It went on with the Dixie Chicks and the World War, and we'll put a boot in your ass, not the World War, but the war on terrorism, and we'll put a boot in your ass after 9/11 and all that. He kind of was unapologetic, which Luke has kind of taken that unapologetic approach, but at the same time, he's doing it within the constraints and playing by the rules of Nashville, which you are too, Ray, is that it's kind of outlawish, but he's still staying in that Nashville lane to where he's still getting the radio play. He's still getting management companies paying attention. Where there's other artists that are just like, you know what, I'm over it. I don't need the Nashville. I don't need it. I'm just going to go develop my cult following and my audience and my fan base, and I'm cool. Luke's kind of playing both sides of that Toby Keith. I'm an outlaw with Merle and Waylon and Willie over here, but over here I'm down on Music Row and I'm still playing by the rules a little bit until it got to the point to where Toby's just, you know, he could do whatever he wanted. I don't know if that's making sense to you what I'm saying, but it kind of reminds me of that path.
It is. Yeah. I mean, luckily for Luke, you know, I think that he is unapologetic totally, and he's going to do it his way and make the music that he wants. You know, what's great for him is where that's landed at is music that, that people can relate to. Even the people who don't typically like mainstream country have latched onto and hold at high esteem. But he's also got the fans and got the people that do love country radio and the mainstream, if you will, also loves music. So he's right there in the middle of those two things, you know, and it just so happens that the stuff, what he wants to do and the music he wants to put out and who he wants to be just happens to be in that spot where both sides go, you know what, that guy's cool, that music's cool, you know, and
here's what he says about you. Me and Ray have been tight for a long time, and I think that's an important part of songwriting, building chemistry with people that you write with and being able to trust them. So that just shows you, like, Luke's got this admiration for you. You have this huge admiration for Luke. You guys are boys. But at the same time, you're building a career too. And I think that that's what's so cool about this story is that you're kind of getting a playbook, man. You're kind of getting this strategy, like Luke and his team are kind of the Bill Belichick and the Tom Brady, and you're kind of watching it. But at the same time, you're right there in the huddle, writing these songs, knowing what's up, and you're getting ready to explode yourself. So I don't know of a cooler path. Like Luke is kind of that guy that took the hit for you and went out there and said, hell yeah, hey, I developed a cult following on Facebook and Instagram and social media, and my songs broke, and here we are, record deals and sellouts and invites and duo, you name it, right? But Ray Fulcher's right there, like building this career with him with accolades that are pretty badass, dude. Like if you think about sounds like confidence, Fulcher has swag for days, and it shows in the effortless way he delivers a lyric. Well, when you deliver a lyric, it's your lyric, which is awesome and a badass concept if you think about it. Fulcher co-wrote Combs' 5-week Billboard Country Airplay #1, Even Though I'm Leaving, and 2-week chart topper, When It Rains, It Pours. Golden Boot Songwriter of the Year for 2019. There's an ease to Ray Fulcher's delivery that signal he's found his voice as an artist after several hits with good friends Luke Combs. That was out of Taste of Country. There are so many EPs hotter than Ray Fulcher's. There are not many EPs hotter than Ray Fulcher's Somebody Like Me right now. These things are being said because it's true. Like if you listen to that EP and the lyrics in it, the lyrics is what carries you, bro. You can never get away from the fact that it's not cubicle, that it's meant, because the lyric is real and raw. And I think that there's a couple different ways that you can take that. It's like, well, I'm still going to be the guy that's going to, you know, my songs might be sung by somebody else, as long it would be cool if you could say, well, I don't know if that really fits that guy. I'm not going to give him that song, which in the publishing world, that really doesn't work that way, I would assume. But I think with what you're building, I think I don't know how to really explain it. That's why I wanted to talk to you, that you are watching guys that you sat in these writer rounds with and came up with and sat up in those apartments and those condos on those long nights dreaming of this. And now you're right there navigating your way through it. And it's just like a weird feeling like, when is it going to happen? When is this big break coming? When's that number one coming? When are we going to hear Ray on big time radio? When is he going to be selling out arenas in 3,000 seats, theaters and stuff? And I don't know, like it's a mind game to sit there in Nashville. And then on top of all this, the world gets hit with this pandemic to where now they're saying no concerts this whole year, pretty much. A lot of people let their whole crews go. This whole waiting game, man, when you know you're on the verge of greatness and then carpets get pulled out from under you like COVID, and then you got to sit there and go, well, man, I want to get to radio. How do I get there faster? It's about the patience and believing in that lyric, bro. And I think that's what you got going for you, is that lyric.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's tough, like especially now it's tough, especially when you're at the spot where I am, where you feel like coming into 2020, you feel like, man, this is the year when it all kind of happens. Well, then the world gets put on hold, and so, you got to be patient, and you got to kind of, what I've chosen to do is kind of figure out what can I control throughout this to, when we come on the other side of it, to come out a better singer, a better artist, better writer, and come out on the other side and almost like we didn't miss a beat kind of thing, and find a way to even help myself grow as an artist even through this. And some of the different lives and stuff have helped that. I think on the other side of it, which has helped me, coming up in very small town Georgia, Harlem is the name of the town, is my dad and like my ball coaches growing up were very big on being tough and mental toughness. And I think part of it is, kind of biding your time, and part of, wondering when it's going to happen for you, and thinking that, that if you just had the opportunity, big things were happening. I think, man, part of it's just being tough as hell, and like being mentally tough enough to like go, hey, if there's been disappointments here, disappointments there, you find a way to shrug them off and use it as motivation, and you keep trucking, fight the good fight, keep the faith, knowing that one of these days you're going to wake up and go, you know what? I'm really proud that I fought through the adversity, because I think on the other side of that, there's a lot of big things waiting. So
I agree. And I think that it's life lessons, man. I think that you can look at it in so many different arenas of life, and just your career just isn't the only part of that. I'm sure that you have fought through, personal adversity. You fought through relationship adversity. And all of that stuff gets to play out in the lyric. And I think that that's going back to the underlying theme of this conversation, Ray Fulcher, is being able to tell a story in 3.5, or if you're a Led Zeppelin or some Guns N' Roses ballads that were 13 minutes long and stuff, or like Freebird, right? Play Freebird, man. Like there are some songs that are longer, but 3.5 is probably the average of storytelling, right? And you're getting to do that. So while you're sitting there being patient and having to pump the brakes and having to be mentally tough, and knowing that the pass is coming your way, knowing that the line drive is going to be hit at you, knowing that the fastball is going to come right down the middle and it's your turn to hit that home run, you got to be ready. You have to be prepared to capitalize on the opportunity. When that opportunity in life presents itself, I tell people all the time, whether it's business, whether it's athletics, whether it's family, whether that's the one that got away that Luke Owens or Jake Owens sang about a couple of years ago. You have to be ready to capitalize. And in hunting, I talk about it all the time in seminars, or when I'm speaking of, you wait all year, you prep, you practice your duck call, your dog training, you're getting your boat ready, your motor ready, you're cleaning your decoys, you're shooting at the sporting clay and skeet events, and you're trying to become a better gunner, you're understanding ballistics and patterning and your choke tubes and sights and visibility, and now you're learning how to communicate and read ducks and body language and instincts. And then all of a sudden, here they come. It's September 15th, you're in Saskatchewan, that first group of mallards presents itself, and you're not ready. You're just like, what the hell did I just work all that time for? You got to be prepared to capitalize when it presents itself. And you are. I mean, that's one good thing about what you're getting to witness with a good buddy that's taking you under his wing. But at the same time, it can't be considered that Ray Fulcher just is being taken under Luke's wing. You are building this career. You are responsible for a lot of those songs. He has been that vehicle and that voice that's got some of those lyrics out there. And now here you come to deliver the rest of those badass, clever, witty lyrics. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, man. I think it's really good music. I think you got a cool message, a good vibe, a good head on your shoulders. Plus you're a hunter. You're wearing a duck hat there with a Woodrow on it, which is what most Georgians do, because most Georgians have never seen a mallard. Ray Fulcher's.
When I go out to Arkansas.
Yeah, man. We got to get together in a camp sometime, man, and get some guitar playing around a fire, and you guys come over to camp in Arkansas, or maybe we'll talk off record about all of us getting together in California this year. I got some sick spec camps there, and we could do a big Traeger event and cook out and get to know each other better.
Let's do it, man. That'd be awesome.
Man, I appreciate you. Let's do this again. Let's keep talking about the music, and maybe once one of these singles gets on the radio that you're singing, let's get back on it and promote it. But we're a big fan, man, and I want to add all your music to our Foul Life playlist that people are loving, and just work with you, man, because we're a true believer in it. Congratulations.
I appreciate it, man. Thank y'all so much for having me on and believing in me. It means a whole lot.
First of many, brother. First of many. That's Ray Fulcher. Another episode of This Life Ain't For Everybody, brought to you again by our friends at Jack Daniels, the one and only, the iconic, one of the most American brands you will ever witness. Old Number 7, Lynchburg, Tennessee. Enjoy it responsibly. Never allow underage drinking. If you're visiting Music City, have a Jack Daniels down on Broadway or in Midtown, and listen to these badass artists that are fighting. They're coming up, working the honky tonks, battling to try to get a little taste of success. It might be in songwriting, it might be in performing, it might be in production. Dave Cobb is a wizard at production, winning Grammy after Grammy. And the new album, Jason Isbell's Reunion, is absolute genius. If you guys haven't heard that, if you girls haven't heard it, get it now. This is Chad Belding. This Life Ain't For Everybody, from my good buddy Ray Fulcher out of the state of Georgia, living in Music City, Nashville, Tennessee, USA. Tom, hit that button. We're going to go out with a Ray Fulcher song today. We usually go out with Leith Lofton and Drake White. What you going to do when the money's all gone, Ray? Can we go out with one of yours, please, today?
Let's do it, man.
Can we do Take Me Back Roads?
Oh, absolutely.
This is Ray Fulcher, Take Me Back Roads. Tom, hit that button. Thank you all very much. We will talk to you soon. And again, thank you for supporting the partners and sponsors that support us.